Hello and welcome to part 7 of my series of videos that look at common mistakes made by homebrewers all the way through the process from grain to glass. The purpose of this series is to put people on the right track within a number of key brewing areas within each video. If you find that you are already on the right track, then I hope this will be reassuring. I will not go into huge detail on each topic, but where appropriate I will link forward to further information within the video and mirror these links within the video's YouTube description. So let's get started. I guess it should go without saying that the main ingredient of any beer recipe is water. However, there is much misunderstanding among homebrewers in general around water suitability. Firstly, there is the old saying that says something like, if your water is good enough for drinking, then it is good enough for homebrewing. The trouble is, this is a very broad and subjective statement, and some homebrewers take it very literally and wonder why they are not getting the results they desire from their beer brewing. So let's look into this further, as water chemistry plays a big role in the final flavour of your homebrew beer. Water that is pumped into homes is classified as being sourced from either surface water, which includes the rivers and lakes, or from groundwater. Surface water is certainly much higher in organic matter and will be filtered and then treated with chlorine. Chlorine helps keep our drinking water safe, but the problem is chlorine can cause other chemical reactions in beer that can lead to band-aid or plastic-like flavours. Thankfully there are workarounds here. Firstly, you can simply leave your water in an open container overnight, and in some cases this will be enough. Alternatively, you can use Kempton tablets at the rate of 1 per 75 litres or 20 US liquid gallons. Letting this sit for 20 to 30 minutes will be enough. Finally, you can boil the water and allow it to cool to mash in temperatures before using it. On the flip side, we have groundwater, which is much higher in mineral content compared to surface water, though both types will need adjustment subject to beer style. A sulfate to chloride ratio is a good and easy way to assess the effect of your standard water and will lead you to tune in to final adjustments. A sulfate to chloride ratio of 2 to 1 has the effect of giving a high level of hop balance along with dryness. However, if you flip this into sulfate to chloride ratio of 1 to 2, then you will lean towards a higher level of malt balance along with a more rounded, less bitter effect. Within my more recent style guide videos I include a water section, an example of which is shown on screen, and this one is from my Belgian triple guide. This explains the water profiles suitable for the given style with alternatives according to taste. Having said all of this, our taste palettes are different, so you may well prefer a hoppy beer with a water profile that brings out malt balance and vice versa. You never know. One big mistake is to listen to what others prefer and just roll with this when it comes to taste. You owe it to yourself to find out your own taste sweet spots and dial in your brewing into this. Unless of course you are brewing for the masses, and then you will need to strike for an average taste. Staying with the theme of water, let us now look at the importance of pH and how it is often misunderstood. Firstly, let me make it very clear that the pH of your water is not especially important. However, what is important is the pH of your wort once the grain has been added. Your grain selection will have a profound effect on pH, and usually the task at hand is to drop pH rather than rise it. Ideally you want your pH to be in the range of 5.2 to 5.5, but a little higher can be acceptable for darker styles. Your focus should be to use a calculator before you even start brewing to see where your mash pH will be with your grain and water together. Salt should be added to your brewing water before adding your grain, and frankly making changes during the mash are really going to be too late. Quite often I get asked the question of should both the mash and sparge water be pH adjusted or just the mash water. You will note that most recipe calculators give the options here, and this is because there are differing opinions on this. Personally, I tend to treat my mash water only because sparge water volumes are usually small for my home brewing. Because of this smaller size, they will not have a profound effect on pH. The important thing here being that your sparge runoff should be below a pH of 6, because if you are over this amount, then you can start to extract undesirable compounds from your grain, which could lead to harsh flavours. I have a couple of water related videos on my channel for further details, including how to test your own water on a budget. Water is certainly not the most interesting of topics, but it is key to your brewing success. It is fair to say that the internet is full of all grain recipes. As I have made very clear in previous videos, because of this amount of choice, there is simply no reason to go with random recipes from people that you have no knowledge of. Brewmaster666 may well have a cool username, or perhaps not, but as an unknown, why risk your precious time and money on his or her recipe? Having found a recipe that you like the sound of, or the look of for that matter, from a good source, I suggest that you brew this just as is. However, there is this creative habit among homebrewers to customize the recipe on the first go and brew it then as a full-size batch. I'm sure you know that I am a keen advocate of creativity, particularly in homebrewing, but it should be realised that writing recipes is a gradual progression, even among professional recipe writers. Even the very best and the most practiced recipe writers rarely strike gold on the first batch. For this reason, test or pilot batches are made for testing. This is commonplace in breweries and with experienced homebrewers that write their own recipes because, let's face it, a large batch of something experimental just does not make any sense. I have shared my own test batch setup in a video, and the equipment and time needed for these small batch brews is very minimal. I know that some brewers with fancy larger brewing systems see this as a step back, but when you consider its purpose, it is certainly a big step forward, and doing small batch testing is a great way to get your full batch brews totally on point. Check out the video shown on screen now for more details on my setup and methods in relation to small test batch brewing. And finally, let's now look at yeast flavour under pressure. Homebrewers these days are fermenting a lot of different styles under pressure. It is vital to realise that some styles of beer, like for example German or Belgian wheat beers, to mention just two, rely on flavour and aroma contributions from the yeast to be to style. If you ferment under pressure from day one, then this will suppress yeast flavour and aroma, essentially changing your beer into another style rather than your intended one. The workaround here is to simply ferment normally for the first 4 days and then allow pressure. You can still have a spunning valve attached, simply have it fully open. After day 4 of this, you can then readjust your spunning valve to a normal and same level of pressure, like 10 to 12 psi. The reason this works is because your yeast imprints its flavour and aroma within the first 3 to 4 days of fermentation. This simple technique will let you enjoy the best of both worlds. I would recommend that you use this technique with any yeast where its esters are of importance to the style, which is pretty much everything except for lager styles and beer styles where a neutral yeast is used. Dry yeast examples include Fermentis US05, Mangrove Jacks M44 and Lallemand BRY97. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support, you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel, then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!